This morning, jobs under threat as the clock ticks towards a government shutdown.
I think you could very well end up with a closed country for a period of time.
The Trump administration threatening to fire federal employees if a deal to fund the government isn't reached in less than a week. Usually, if the government shuts down, some workers go on unpaid leave. But now the White House raising the stakes, saying additional jobs will be lost.
400,000 more federal employees are about to be laid off, regardless of whether or not the government shuts down. And we already know this because according to a February 2025 memo from the Office of Management and Budget, they expect there to be a total of 700,000 total federal layoffs. Now, phase one of this plan was initiated March 13th of 2025, and we saw historical federal layoffs from there. But many people don't realize that there is a phase two of that plan, and that initiation begins September 30th of 2025, the exact deadline for our government to agree on a budget to prevent a shutdown. Now, I wonder if this is some type of negotiation tactic to limit the amount of additional federal layoffs we already know are coming, but that's extremely doubtful, but narrative manipulation nonetheless. Now, today, we're going to talk about that as well as the stats on how many federal workers have been laid off already and how many people actually work for the government. Now, having said that, you guys, happy Friday. Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. You guys already know this video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Mitch, sir, happy Friday. How are you?
Frankly, I'm exhausted. I mean, we're up to 368 pages on the trial brief. So I thought the amicus was tough. This thing's tough. But with that said, it's all good because it's really shaping up to be an incredible document. But with that said, one of the items that Travis brought up, one must realize that this is political theater. Well, we're going to close the government down because the left doesn't want to do what the right wants to do. The right doesn't want to do what the left wants to do. I've seen this so many times over my life. We all have. It's just political theater. Leave it at that. With that said, the 400,000 people that are more than likely, regardless of what happens due to the political theater, going to lose their jobs, those are people. Now, whether they should have had the job or not had the job is debatable. What is not debatable is what happens to them moving forward and why they were in this position to begin with. So one must ask, if I work for an employer, am I adding value into the chain? And what we have seen consistently from the government for multiple years now, the answer for the most part is no. When you look at the Federal Reserve with 23,000 employees, to this very second, I cannot figure out, but for the fact that the Federal Reserve exists for the banks, I can't figure out why they exist for mom and pop. And the problem with the government is they seem to have forgotten that the government works for the people, not the other way around. So unfortunately, the pawn is the 400,000 people. The pawn are the people that are going to lose their jobs because the government forgot who they work for.
Or maybe they tricked us into expecting them to work for us when the reality is they really work for the banks, just like the American people. But let's go into the narrative that's spiraling out of control right now. Coming out yesterday, September 25th, White House threatens sharp cuts in U.S. workforce if government shuts down. And again, we're saying this is nonsense. There's hundreds of thousands of people who has their jobs at risk right now. President Donald Trump's administration has raised the stakes in a showdown with U.S. Senate Democrats over a looming partial government shutdown, threatening to permanently remove workers from some federal agencies if funding runs out on Tuesday. But this is old news. This is not true. The Office Management and Budget, in a late Wednesday memo, asked agencies to identify programs, projects, and activities where discretionary funding will lapse on October 1st if the U.S. Congress does not pass legislation to keep the federal government open. Programs that did not benefit from an infusion of mandatory appropriations will bear the brunt of a shutdown. The memo told agencies to submit the proposed reduction in force plans and to issue notices to employees if they are ultimately shut down. The memo revealed shutdown planning that the Trump administration has kept quiet about until now. But again, I'm going to show you guys that's absolute nonsense. It was also part negotiation tactic with 6 references in a short document to how Democrats voted against the Republicans' stopgate funding bill last week. The federal government is on the brink of its 15th partial shutdown since 1981 because lawmakers have failed to agree on a plan for discretionary funding for the new fiscal year, or about 1/4 of the $7 trillion budget. Here's the issue, and I'm going to pull up the original memo. According to Wikipedia, okay, on February 13th, so this is not new. They're just reiterating what they've already stated. Mainstream is using that for narrative manipulation because on February 13th, OMB director and OPM acting director ordered federal agencies to send them plans by March 13th to slash their workforces through layoffs. They said the agency should focus on employees whose jobs are not required in statute and who face furloughs in government shutdowns. Again, this was February 13th. Typically 1/3 of the federal workforce, or 700,000 employees. Here's the memo from the U.S. Office of Management and Budget and U.S. Office of Personnel Management, February 26th of 2025, to the heads of executive departments and agencies. Couple things, I'm just going to skim through this and I'm going to show you guys. Again, they've already said they're going to do this, and there's a phase 2 that starts on the same date. Now, here's the background. The federal government is costly, ineffective, and deeply in debt. Exactly. At the same time, it is not producing results for the American public. Instead, tax dollars are being siphoned off to fund unproductive and unnecessary programs that benefit radical interest groups while hurting hardworking Americans. And you guys should go back here and take a look at this. And this is them giving them instructions on how to do this. A significant reduction in the number of full-time equivalent positions by eliminating positions that are not required. And here it is right here. Pursuant to the president's direction, agencies should focus on the maximum elimination of functions that are not, and here's the key word, statutorily mandated, while driving the highest quality, most efficient delivery of their statutorily mandated required functions. And also they're mentioning some return to office actions, but that statutory mandated part means essentially, and again, according to Wikipedia and some other outlets, that 700,000 total positions are about to be laid off, and only 300,000 less than have been laid off already. Now, positions not typically designated as essential during a lapse in appropriations. So this is going over a lot of this stuff. They have already outlined a hiring freeze right there, non-statutory mandated functions. You see that there, removing underperforming employees, reducing headcounts. I mean, it's all over here, large scale reductions in force. Here's phase 1, review and approval no later than March 13th. So a whole bunch of people were laid off, but again, people forget. Okay, look at when I scroll down here, phase 2. We're just going into phase 2 right now. You see, phase 2 plans should be planned and implemented by September 30th of 2025. Before going to Mitch, I want to listen to one more video, 1 minute long, of a PBS news anchor supporting mainstream narrative. Because again, I just showed you proof back in February. They already warned us and told the agencies what's going to happen. So what are they talking about? Listen to this video and listen to the narrative.
Hi, everyone. This is Lisa Desjardins from PBS NewsHour. We've had a lot of news on the potential for a government shutdown, and let me take you through it. First of all, last night, NewsHour's Liz Landers obtained the memo from the Office of Management and Budget directing agencies basically what to do if we get in a shutdown. Now, part of this is usual housekeeping, telling agencies they've got to get in their contingency plans. But some of it is unusual. The fact is that the Trump administration has taken down from view the contingency plans that had been in place. The other unusual part, highly unusual, is that the Trump administration told agencies, if in fact there is a government shutdown, they would like them to be ready to proceed with reductions in force. That's mass layoffs of government employees. They specified some categories for that, but basically it would be layoffs of employees whose funding had run out and the funding would run out in a shutdown for most government agencies and those employees which do not meet or align with the Trump administration's goals.
Mitch, it looks like mainstream is once again pushing a narrative, creating propaganda. We've known about this for over 7 months. They've warned them about this for 7 months. It sounds like on Wednesday night, they were just reiterating what they've already been saying because there's a deadline fastly approaching. So can you explain, and again, they've known about this for 7 months, but is just narrative control? And what narrative exactly are they trying to create? Any idea?
They're trying to create the narrative that they're entitled to a job in perpetuity on the backs of the taxpayers. And growth for the sake of government growth is the definition of tyranny. So I want to switch gears just a little bit. If you look at Canada, do you realize that the total government employees are 4.4 million and the total private sector employees are 16 million? So that's just a hair over. 20% of the government employees are controlling the lives of 80%, the 16 million, of the other employees. Well, if you take that same number and you say 80% of that 21%, that's roughly 3,250,000 people that more than likely shouldn't be employed. Canada economically is much worse condition today than the United States. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but it is what it is. So if you take that same theory and you say, we, the United States, don't want to go bankrupt, and what has happened in our political system for, let's call it, the last 15, 20 years, is growth by people who unfortunately were hired. That statement is true, that should not have been hired. But the fact of the matter is they were, but there was no value added into the system. The system that requires that value add is mom and pop. So it's not unusual at all to say we have to correct this problem. Unfortunately, politically, it's become heated for reasons that are due to manipulation and not due to fact. The fact is, if the population that is employed can deliver the goods and services, the value to society, then there's justification to have the job. If they can't, then there's justification not to, i.e. shut down the Department of Education. There's problems here, but there are solutions.
I still can't figure out what narrative are they trying to push? Like maybe because they already know that there's more layoffs coming and there's about to be a lot more layoffs. So I'm wondering, are they just trying to use this to make the Trump administration appear evil after they keep the shutdown open? Because they'll say, okay, we agreed to keep the government open because maybe the Trump administration is not going to lay off people. And then boom, a few weeks later, whole bunch of layoffs. Oh, he lied to us. What the heck do they have to gain, Mitch? I don't understand that.
Look at it this way. Yeah, look at it this way. The reason why I just said the Department of Education is because it's connected to the teachers union. So if you are a union employee at a government, the union is going to say, you must keep us employed in perpetuity. And look at what this has done to society. This is the Denton Central Appraisal District problem, right? It's the problem of mom and pop being extorted from tax dollars that were fraudulently created by overvaluation and overtaxation and being demanded to be handed over to the school districts. These things are all connected. This isn't by accident. This is being done on purpose. So when you understand that, it's the unions themselves, it's the existence of i.e. the teachers union that is pushing these buttons behind the scenes. But the bottom line is there is no money to pay for the bonds that the teachers union through the school districts have created. This is where the ultimate conflict is. So why do you need a Department of Education in Washington whatsoever when in fact all education should be brought down to the local, never mind the state, bypass the state, local. If the state says, well, we want this as across the board to be taught, that's perfectly fine. But all real estate and all taxpayers of real estate are local. Federal government's got nothing to do with it. And frankly, the state government has proven they're less than incompetent. So the point of the matter is, it's those who are in control that are putting money in their pocket that don't deserve the money in their pocket. And they treat the taxpayers as their personal piggy bank. But this is why you've got problems, and you have people pushing back on the left, unfortunately, because they have been induced to do something on a statement that simply isn't true.
This narrative manipulation is going to drastically impact millions of people that are still working for the government. Now, let's go over those stats, Mitch, and see how much room is left for layoffs at the federal and state level. Starting with the stats of how many people are working for the government right now, this is only going to 2023. So we don't have good data as usual on this, but I want to point your attention to the blue and then the grayish color. So the blue is the federal government and the grayish is state and local. And you guys already know from following us, the state and local has got a huge problem right now. So there's probably going to be massive amounts of layoffs that continue, they've already started, that continue on the state and local level. But for federal right now, according to this data from 2023, there are nearly 3 million people employed by the federal government. This is saying 2.93, also employed from the state and local government, 19.58 million people. Now, the interesting thing is, this is actually under where we were in 2019. So if it's under where we were in 2019 and layoffs are just going to continue, what does that tell you guys about the debt that they have to service? The debt that they have to service is finally catching up to these stats. When we look at the stats for how many people have already been laid off, now again, according to an analysis on that memo, about 700,000 people are going to be laid off. But according to the Challenger report, the most updated one going to August, so far 292,279 people have been laid off so far through Doge actions from the government, which means that's about 400,000 shy. And I wonder if when phase 2 is activated, are we gonna have another 400,000 people that are about to be laid off? Now, another interesting thing that I'm also waiting on, and it hasn't had that much of an impact so far, is the Doge or federal layoff downstream impact. Because remember, those layoffs are going to feed into other layoffs, and I just don't trust them to track that appropriately. But so far, they're saying that as a result of the government layoffs, so far, 17,346 other jobs have been impacted as a result of that. Now let's listen to this video that was made about 4 days ago. So before all of this pandemonium, like if you shut down the government, we're going to have layoffs. No, we're going to have layoffs no matter what. Listen to what he has to say about the layoffs coming in the form of VA, which is not what we really want to see.
Hey, federal employees, especially at the VA, this update just raised the stakes. Please share this with VA employees. Yesterday, Secretary Doug Collins told Congress that the agency is still planning to cut up to 80,000 jobs, but here's what's new and shocking. He now says it could be even more, or it could be less. That's right, he confirmed that the 15% layoff plan is real, that it's not final, and the number could still go up. Senators from both parties called him out. Blumenthal warned of a looming disaster. Hassan accused him of dodging oversight. And then Collins revealed something deeply troubling that we've already heard. VA leadership has asked its own employees to sign NDAs about the workforce plan, which means staff can't even answer questions they already know the answer to. Originally, the final RIF plan was due May 9th in a few days. Now it's delayed. No numbers, no details, no guarantees. For now, Collins says frontline doctors and nurses are safe, but every lawmaker in the hearing seemed to agree there's no way that you can hit 80,000 cuts at the VA without hitting critical roles and putting veterans' care at risk.
Mitch, do you think that phase 2 is about to begin and that phase 2 of the plan is about to cause more mass layoffs for the government, federal, state, local? Do you think that that happens regardless of whether or not the federal government shuts down?
Yes. There's also going to be a phase 3. This is going to happen regardless. Let me try and tie something together here. So in 2007, we had the real estate crisis due to the mortgage-backed securities. It was somewhat confined to the real estate with the mortgage-backed securities. This go-round, we're going to have the real estate with the mortgage-backed securities plus the bonds, and the bonds are magnitudes bigger than the value of the real estate. So you end up in a circle where one person gets laid off. Now, how many people are affected up the chain and down the chain by that one person getting laid off? So the government saying, well, we would like to hold on to the good employees, even that isn't going to happen. It's bloated. And I want to go down a rabbit trail just for 1 second. So Tricolor went bankrupt. That company had car loans, a car loan as an example, with multiple lenders. One car, multiple lenders. This just came out yesterday. So the company was committing fraud. Now, the bondholders have woken up. The lawsuits are flying fast and furious so everybody can get in line and get a piece of a shrinking pie. Doesn't make any sense, but that's what the bondholders are doing. It's in the data. The information is always in the data. The shareholders of Tricolor, many of them were large institutional holders. Where was their due diligence? And isn't it interesting that Tricolor goes under, CarMax is suffering? It's the same symptoms, identical. Why? Because Tricolor ended up doing the exact same thing that Countrywide Financial did in 2007. Enron, what was the issue with Enron? Fake data. Countrywide, fake data. Tricolor, fake data. So isn't it interesting that my case with Denton Central Appraisal District is the same issue? Fake data. Fraudulent overvaluation, fraudulent overtaxation. And here's the underlying issue with all of this. The median household income cannot support the fraudulent debt and the interest payments, which are also fraudulent on the fraudulent debt, that were created by the school districts and the central appraisal districts. Well, isn't it interesting that because the data was faked, the income doesn't exist in any of those circumstances I just went through? The point of the matter is, it's going to shrink. There's going to be millions of people that are going to end up getting laid off because nobody wanted to pay attention to the data. Nobody wanted to look. Everybody's getting fat and happy. Isn't this great? No, it's not. It's been a fraud. Now the fraud's being exposed and the wheels, kind of pun intended, are coming off. That 400,000 is going to get laid off and it's going to be much worse.
Speaking about the wheels coming off, Mitch, let's listen to a video from 1 day ago about a young woman who's been trying to find a job in this market.
Interview updates. Yes, I'm a little bit on the verge of tears, so if I start crying, it's why. But I am so I get it. Things don't work out for a reason, but it just feels like nothing ever works out, and it's really starting to piss me off. So there was this job that I was perfect for. I cannot explain it enough. Everything that they needed, I hit, and I do have a very unique AI specific editing job. I work on AI bots. That is exactly what the role was. Whatever, it's fine. And it was for a really cool company. And stop crying. But I use their magazines every day. I need to stop crying. I use some of their newspapers and magazines every single day for my own personal interests and stuff. And so they posted this role and I'm so excited for it. And I had messaged the SVP on LinkedIn and I was like, hey, this is my resume. I really fit this well. And he goes, yeah, the role is based out of LA or New York. Is that okay? And I said, yes, I can relocate to LA. I live in Chicago. Totally fine. And so he is like, great, I'll set up a call, sets up the call with the talent director. And I get on the call and I've been prepping so hard for this interview because I want it so bad. I get on the call with the talent director. First question he asked me, where are you located? And I said, Chicago, but I'm willing to relocate to LA. He goes, I'm going to have to stop you. I can't put you forward in the interview process anymore. And I was like, okay, even if he's like, you need to be based directly in LA or New York right now, because we do day before notifications for the interview process. And we don't want people spending money to get here for our interview. One, I feel like that's a discretion I should make, which maybe it is the right one. Like, yeah, I shouldn't be spending money to go on this interview, but whatever. So then I asked him, I said, hey, the guy I messaged on LinkedIn said him and I could chat. So I'm wondering what standard protocol is, because now I'm talking with you. And he was like, oh, I worked directly with him, referred you to me. And that's why we're having this conversation. I guess first of all, nobody has applied for this role because I've been making sure that nobody's applying, or at least on LinkedIn that I can see. And it's been posted for at least 2 months now. I hit every single qualification. So it's like, can we not just bend the rules a little bit and just give me a Zoom interview? And so I guess I'm just really upset. I'm just really upset because the last job that I interviewed for, they decided to cancel the position right after they had I had finished all the interviews, and they said, if we uncancel it, it's you. And it's just like, why does nothing work out? I'm really starting to lose my marbles here. And I know the job market is so hard for everyone, but I'm just like, at this point, they don't want to hire people. They don't want to hire people. They're just posting the jobs, and they don't want anyone in the role because they had 8 people apply for this job, according to LinkedIn. And it's like, at least half of them probably weren't qualified, and probably more than that. So I don't know what they want anymore.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but back during the global financial crisis, I actually accumulated and spent $1 million. But by the age of 23, I had lost everything. And when I lost my job because I couldn't make any money in mortgage anymore, I went to go in the job market to find another job. I couldn't find another job, and I was stuck taking a job where I first started working back in high school, because that's the only place that would hire me, which was Ace Hardware. So I went from making all this money as a stupid kid, punk kid, couldn't see past my nose, wasn't humble at all. It was a huge struggle back then. Thank God I'm at where I'm at right now. I thank God every day. I pray and I thank God. But, it was horrible. And so I guess the question should be not what do we do after we lose our jobs, but what do we do to best protect ourselves and protect the jobs that we already have?
One must be rather sympathetic to her plight, but her plight is no different than the other 400,000 people that are going to be laid off. It's going to be more, but let's run with it. So isn't it interesting that her employer can't articulate what the needs of the company are, more than likely because there's multiple divisions, and inside of those divisions, they don't talk to each other. And yet the employee herself can't articulate what it is that the company is expecting of her. So the net result of all this is that both entities, both people, are talking past each other. They're not even on the same plane. And that becomes the issue with what I said before is, are you adding value to the company that you work for? This person that you just saw in this video is capable, obviously. She understands AI. This is what her job was. She will find another job at some point. The problem is you've got to be able to bridge that gap because things are going to get worse. So being disheartened at the current moment is counterproductive. This is what happened. You're going to have to move past it very quickly because honestly, you don't have the time to be making videos. The time you spent doing this video, the time you spent worrying about it is totally counterproductive to where you want to be. And that's part of the message that I think Travis is asking me to get out here right now. Sitting there and saying, oh, woe is me, is going to accomplish nothing. Best to figure out, this is what I do, get your resumes out, and best to be doing that before problems arise. Most of these government employees have known for months this was coming down the pipe. So to all of a sudden say, well, I'm shocked and I'm surprised, yeah, that doesn't cut it. I'm very sympathetic to it, but it doesn't cut it. And if you're networking in that 7 months period of time, what are the probabilities that you would have found another job, maybe even outside of that particular market, i.e. Washington, D.C., which for your livelihood for the rest of your life and the betterment of the rest of your life may not be such a bad thing. Stability is quite often more important than thinking you've got a job in perpetuity. Stability is better.
Stability is, Mitch. And another thing that's really important, and looking back, I know this now, hope. Hope is so important. And the hope is something that I lost, and I didn't get my hope back for 9 years. Actually, I had to find my wife. Before I found my wife, right, about 6 months, 6 to 7 months before I found my wife, I found my hope again. And that's probably why my wife married me, because I had that hope. And I got to tell people, man, if you've lost hope, my heart goes out to you. I had to pray to God, and I had to go after my goals and my discipline, and that built me up again, and that built my confidence up again. And I got to tell you guys, please don't lose your hope. That is one of the most valuable attributes that we have as human beings is our hope. Don't lose it. They want you to, because if you lose hope, you become stuck in the system. Please don't let that happen to you. Now, don't forget, guys, go to the links in this description. Go to Mitch's website, mockingbirdproperties.com. Go to my website, realestatemindset.org. We have the truth there waiting for you to learn. Now, other than that, guys, if you're out there investing in yourselves, the housing market, the economy, whatever it is, you guys already know. We wish you luck, and we hope you win.